It always begins quietly. No alarms, no headlines. Just a faint point of light, barely visible against the endless dark. Out there, beyond the orbit of Mars, something slips into view. Cold, silent, unannounced. Astronomers give it a name the way they always do. Letters. Numbers. Order. 3I/Atlas. Another object. Another discovery. Another dot to be tracked, logged, and filed away. At least, that's what it looks like at first. Because on the charts, everything seems calm. The object follows the ecliptic, the same invisible highway used by countless rocks before it. Its speed makes sense. Its path feels familiar. There is comfort in patterns like this. Humans trust what they can predict. And, for a while, 3I/Atlas behaves exactly as expected. No sudden turns. No wild acceleration. No signs of danger. Just a traveler passing through. But then, the light arrives. Not the kind you see with your eyes. The kind you measure. The kind you turn into numbers and curves and graphs. The light curve. It's supposed to be simple. As an object spins through space, it reflects sunlight. Bright, dim, bright again. A smooth rhythm, like breathing. Astronomers have seen millions of these curves. They know them the way sailors know the tide. So when the first data comes in, no one is excited. No one is worried until someone pauses. Because the curve isn't smooth. It bends, just a little. Not enough to trigger panic. Not enough to break a model. But enough to make someone lean closer to the screen. The brightness rises, then hesitates. It falls, then lingers. A subtle stutter, like a skipped heartbeat. At first, it's blamed on noise. Bad angles, cosmic dust, a glitch in calibration. That happens all the time. So the data is cleaned, adjusted, checked again. But the bend stays. And that's when the room grows quiet. Because light doesn't lie. It doesn't guess. It doesn't imagine. Light only does what physics allows. And this isn't quite allowed. The curve suggests shape, but not a random one. It hints at flat surfaces, sharp edges, unusual reflectivity. Not impossible, just unlikely. Someone mentions rotation. Maybe it's tumbling. Maybe it's broken. Maybe it's old. All reasonable explanations. All safe explanations. Still, the numbers refuse to settle down. The object seems to brighten too evenly, then dim too sharply, as if something about its surface is deliberate. That word isn't spoken out loud. Not yet. Instead, the data is passed along. One observatory sends it to another. A quiet email, a shared file. Can you check this? Across continents, other scientists take a look. Different instruments, different skies, same result. The curve bends the same way. Now the question changes. Not, is this real? But why is it consistent? Because randomness doesn't repeat itself so cleanly. 3I/Atlas is still far from the sun, still cold, still distant. Nothing should be changing yet. And yet, the light behaves as if it already knows what's coming, as if it's preparing. Someone overlays older models, classic comet behavior, asteroid profiles. None of them fit perfectly, close but not quite. The object reflects more light than expected, then less, then more again. Not chaotic, measured. timed, and suddenly the discovery doesn't feel routine anymore. It feels personal, as if the universe has leaned in just a little. There's a moment every scientist knows, the moment when data stops feeling abstract, when it feels like a presence. 3I/Atlas doesn't flare, it doesn't roar, it doesn't announce itself. It just behaves differently. Enough to be noticed, not enough to be explained. And that's the most unsettling place to be. Between certainty and doubt. Between comfort and curiosity. Between we've seen this before and no, we haven't. The object continues its slow approach, indifferent to the attention it's drawing. It doesn't care about names, or theories, or debates whispered in hallways. It just moves, following its path, holding its secrets. Somewhere, a researcher saves the file and leans back. They stare at the ceiling a little longer than usual, because they know what this means. If the first light curve is wrong, then everything that follows might be wrong too. And if that's true, then this isn't just another object passing through our solar system. It's a question, a quiet one, a patient one, drifting toward us at thousands of kilometers per hour, waiting to be understood, or waiting to be missed. As the screens dim and the night deepens, 3I/Atlas keeps moving, unchanged, unbothered. Its light still bending just enough. And somewhere in that subtle curve, a truth begins to form. Something has entered our sky, and it doesn't quite fit the story we tell ourselves about the universe. Not yet, and maybe not ever. At first, no one wants to say it out loud, because space is messy, data is messy, and most mysteries disappear the moment you collect enough numbers. So that's what they do. They collect more. Night after night, telescopes lock onto the same point in the sky. Cameras blink, sensors hum. Light pours in, quietly, patiently. Every observation adds another layer, another slice of truth. And with each new layer, the picture is supposed to become clearer. But with 3I/Atlas, the opposite happens. The light curve doesn't smooth out. It sharpens. Imagine watching a distant lighthouse. You expect a steady rhythm, a natural sweep of light across dark water. But instead, the beam hesitates. Bright, pause, dim, pause. Not random, not broken, precise. The reflectivity rises, then falls again and again. Always within the same narrow range, always timed the same way. At first glance, it looks harmless, a small variation, easy to dismiss. But comets don't do this. Asteroids don't either. Natural objects spin, tumble, wobble. Their light curves are rough, uneven, imperfect. They tell a story of chaos. This curve tells a story of control. Somewhere between the data points, a pattern begins to breathe. Not loud enough to scare anyone, not bold enough to make headlines, just present enough to make people uneasy. Scientists start comparing models. Classic comet behavior. Icy surfaces venting gas. Dust clouds catching sunlight. It doesn't fit. Then asteroid models. Rocky bodies. Irregular shapes. Chaotic rotation. Still no match. The reflectivity is too clean. Too intentional. It brightens when it shouldn't. dulls when it should flare, as if the surface knows when it's being watched. Someone suggests geometry. Maybe it's shaped oddly. Flat planes, sharp angles. That could explain part of it, but not the timing. Because geometry doesn't keep time. Physics doesn't care about precision. It only cares about force. Yet this object behaves like it's following rules, not reacting to them. More observatories join in. Different countries. Different skies. Different instruments. They expect disagreement. They get confirmation. The same curve. The same rise and fall. The same rhythm. It's no longer one telescope seeing something strange. It's many seeing the same thing. And that's when the word noise starts to feel weak. Noise is messy. Noise is inconsistent. This is neither. This is structured. Still, no one jumps to conclusions, because history is full of false alarms. Pulsars were once called little green men. Quasars confused everyone. Science learns by doubting itself first. So they dig deeper. They zoom in on the data, break it down second by second, frame by frame. The light curve doesn't jitter. It doesn't drift. It holds, like a signal holding its breath. And now a new question forms. Not, what is it, but what isn't it? It isn't behaving like ice. It isn't behaving like rock. It isn't behaving like debris. It behaves like a surface designed to reflect and hide at the same time. Somewhere in the silence of a control room, someone whispers it. Anomaly. Not as a claim. As a placeholder. A word you use when the universe refuses to explain itself. An anomaly isn't proof of anything, but it is a warning. It means your assumptions are being tested. 3I/Atlas keeps moving closer to the sun. Still distant, still cold. And yet, the reflectivity shifts continue, unchanged by distance, unchanged by angle. That alone is strange. Most objects change, as conditions change. This one doesn't seem to care, as if it arrived already prepared, already finished, already complete. Scientists argue gently at first, then more intensely. Some say it's just an odd shape, a rare alignment, a coincidence stacked on coincidence. Others stay quiet because deep down they feel it too. That subtle tension, the feeling you get when you realize the map doesn't match the land. The light curve isn't screaming, it's whispering. And whispers are harder to ignore because they make you lean in. As days pass, the curve becomes one of the most watched plots in the system, a simple line on a black background. Up, down, pause. Up, down, pause. Like a heartbeat you weren't expecting to hear. No message, no burst, no transmission, just behavior. And sometimes, behavior says more than words ever could. Publicly, everything stays calm. Routine updates, careful language, no speculation. But privately, something has shifted. The discovery phase is over. Now comes disbelief, because if this is just noise, then it's the most disciplined noise ever recorded. And if it isn't, then this light curve isn't just out of place, it's out of context. 3I/Atlas doesn't glow brighter. It doesn't fade away. It simply continues its quiet performance, repeating the same pattern, as if daring us to notice. And the longer we watch, the harder it becomes to pretend that this is normal. Because space is vast, and strange things happen all the time. But precision, that's rare. And intention, That's rarer still. As the data stacks higher, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. This isn't just a rock reflecting sunlight. It's something that follows a rule we haven't named yet, and once you see that, you can't unsee it. The light curve keeps pulsing, steady, silent, unexplained. And somewhere between those rises and falls, the anomaly stops being a question and starts becoming a presence. At first, it feels like coincidence, a flicker in the data, a brief rise in brightness, so small it almost disappears into the noise. Almost. One telescope catches it during a routine scan. Just a few extra photons, then nothing. No alert is raised. No note is sent, because space flickers all the time. Cosmic rays, sensor drift, background stars passing through frame. Most of it means nothing. But then it happens again. Same object, same brightness change, same duration. A rise, a fall, and then darkness. Someone marks the timestamp, just in case. Hours later, another observatory, half a world away, records the same thing. Not at the same moment, but at the same interval. That's when the room gets quiet, because randomness doesn't keep rhythm. The pulse isn't bright, it isn't dramatic, it's subtle, restrained, controlled, like a whisper repeated on purpose. As more telescopes turn toward 3I/Atlas, the pattern sharpens. A faint pulse in brightness, then silence. Then the pulse again, over and over and over, not speeding up, not slowing down, perfectly spaced. At first, the idea feels uncomfortable. Natural objects don't pulse. They flare. They burst. They decay. Pulsing implies timing. Timing implies structure. And structure implies something no one wants to say, yet. So scientists search for excuses. Maybe it's rotation. A strange tumble exposing a reflective face that could explain some variation. But rotation isn't this clean. Tumbling objects wobble. They drift. This doesn't. The pulse arrives like a metronome. Tick, silence, tick. Someone checks the instruments. Could it be a sensor error? They recalibrate. They reset. They cross-check different telescopes, different cameras, different software. Same result. Now the doubt spreads, because if one telescope sees something strange, it's a problem. If every telescope sees the same strange thing, it's a mystery. The pulse grows clearer as more data stacks up. Still faint, still careful, but undeniably there. It's not a flare from the sun. The sun is quiet. It's not outgassing. No plume, no tail. It's not heat-driven. The object is still too cold, and yet it pulses, as if it's doing something. Not reacting, doing. The timing is what troubles everyone most. The pulses repeat at nearly the same interval every time. Not exact to the millisecond, but close enough to feel intentional. Natural processes drift. They get messy. This doesn't. It behaves like it's following a rule. Like it has a schedule. And suddenly, old conversations resurface. SETI papers, long-forgotten theories, discussions no one takes seriously anymore because the universe is loud, but also very quiet. If something wanted to hide, this is how it would do it. Not with a shout, with a whisper. The pulses don't form a message. No pattern we recognize, just presence, proof that something is happening, again and again and again. Some scientists argue it's coincidence layered on coincidence, rare but possible. They point to probability, to edge cases. They remind everyone that space is vast. But probability begins to crack under repetition, because the pulses don't fade. They don't drift, they persist. Night after night, the same rhythm plays out in the dark. Tick, silence, tick, as if the object is counting something, or waiting. The word signal is still avoided in public. Instead, they call it periodic brightness variation. Safe, clinical, empty. But behind closed doors, language changes. Pulse, timing, synchronization. One researcher overlays timestamps from different continents. The alignment is chilling. Not simultaneous, but sequential. Each telescope catches the pulse as the Earth turns, as if the object is indifferent to who is watching, as if it's performing for no one, or for everyone. The idea settles in slowly. This thing would pulse whether we existed or not, which somehow makes it worse, because it suggests purpose without audience. A machine doesn't need to be seen to operate. The object continues its approach towards the inner solar system. Still far, still quiet. The sun hasn't touched it yet. Nothing external should be driving this behavior. And yet, the pulse remains. Steady. Unbothered. Almost patient. Some scientists stop trying to explain it. Instead, they start documenting it. Carefully. Precisely, as if preserving evidence of something they don't yet understand. Others can't sleep, because once you accept that a natural object shouldn't do this, the question changes. Not what causes the pulse, but what maintains it. Maintenance implies energy. Energy implies design, and design implies origin. That's where fear creeps in. Not panic, just a quiet tightening in the chest. Because humanity has always believed one thing, that the universe doesn't notice us, that we are observers, not participants. But pulses feel different. They feel active, intentional, alive. Without being alive, no transmission follows, no escalation. Just the same faint rise in light. Again and again, a heartbeat without a body, a rhythm without a song. Publicly, nothing changes. No press conferences, no warnings, just calm updates filled with careful words. But privately, something has broken. The line between object and behavior, between rock and process, between coincidence and anomaly. The pulse keeps coming, unchanged, unexplained. And now, the doubt has spread far beyond one chart or one lab. It lives in the minds of the people watching. Because if this is natural, then nature has learned a new trick. And if it isn't, then whatever is passing through our solar system right now is doing something on purpose. Silently, patiently, in the dark. Cold is what everyone expects. Out there, far from the sun, cold is the rule. Ice stays frozen. Rock stays quiet. Nothing stirs unless something pushes it. So when the first thermal readings arrive, no one leans forward. No one holds their breath. Because the numbers say what they should say. Low temperature, stable, predictable, until they don't. It starts with a small rise, barely noticeable, just a few degrees above the model, easy to explain away. Maybe a calibration drift, maybe reflected heat from a strange angle. The universe is full of small errors, so they log it and move on. Then the next reading comes in. The temperature drops. Not slowly, not naturally. It drops faster than physics would like. Then it stops and holds. The object isn't spinning fast enough for this. It isn't close enough to the sun. There's no outgassing, no flare, no tail. Nothing that should cause change. Yet the temperature changes anyway. Warms, cools, stabilizes, like it's being adjusted. Someone reruns the models. Classic thermal behavior. Solar heating curves. Surface conductivity. None of them line up. The math insists this shouldn't happen. A natural body absorbs heat, then releases it. Gradually, messily. This isn't messy. This feels staged. As if the object reaches a temperature, then decides, this is enough. The phrase never appears in reports. But the feeling spreads. A hidden thermal pattern begins to emerge. Not dramatic, not extreme, just controlled. The object warms as it should, then stops warming. It cools, then stops cooling, as if something is holding the line. Someone suggests insulation, maybe a thick outer layer trapping heat. Possible. But insulation doesn't explain timing, because the shifts happen in steps. Clean steps, like switches being flipped. On, off, hold. Thermal sensors from different observatories confirm the same behavior. Different instruments, different methods, same result. Now the discomfort grows, because temperature is harder to argue with than light. Light can deceive. Heat is honest. Heat obeys rules. And right now, the rules are bending. The object doesn't behave like ice. It doesn't behave like rock. It behaves like a system, a closed system, managing itself. And that word, managing, changes everything. Management implies awareness, not consciousness, not life, just regulation, like a thermostat in an empty room. No one there, but still working. The idea feels wrong, so they push back. Maybe it's rotation again, a slow spin exposing warmer regions, but the temperature doesn't fluctuate smoothly. It steps. Up, pause, down, pause. Rotation doesn't pause. Rotation flows. This doesn't flow. It waits. Someone overlays the thermal pattern with the brightness pulse. The alignment isn't perfect, but it's close enough to raise eyebrows. Heat changes, then light pulses. Not always, not exactly, but often enough to feel connected, as if two systems are sharing the same clock. That's when the room goes silent, because coincidence can explain one strange thing. It struggles with two. Together, they feel intentional. The object is still far from perihelion, still untouched by intense solar heat. This behavior shouldn't be happening yet. Which means whatever is causing it isn't the sun. And if it isn't the sun, then it's internal. Energy doesn't appear from nowhere. Something inside the object is active, not burning, not exploding, just working. Quietly, efficiently, publicly, the language remains calm. Unexpected thermal variation requires further study. Safe words, neutral words. But behind closed doors, a harder question takes shape. What kind of object regulates its own temperature in deep space? Not life, not biology. Technology. The word hangs there unspoken, because once you say it, you can't take it back. Technology implies builders. Builders imply origin, and origin implies someone else. So instead, they keep watching. The object warms, then cools, then settles into balance again, as if it's conserving something, protecting something, or simply following rules written long before Earth ever formed. The pattern doesn't escalate. It doesn't react to our attention. It doesn't change when we notice it, which somehow makes it more unsettling. A thing that reacts is alive. A thing that ignores you is confident. The thermal curve becomes another chart pinned to the wall, another quiet warning. Light pulses. Reflectivity shifts. Now heat regulation. 3 anomalies. Each one small on its own. Together, a shape begins to form. Not a clear one, but enough to feel. Enough to sense. Like standing in a dark room and realizing something is standing back. Still, watching nothing. Doing something anyway. As days pass, explanations grow thinner. Some scientists cling to edge cases, unknown materials, exotic compositions. Maybe this object is made of something we haven't seen before. That's comforting, because it keeps the universe strange, but not intentional. Others aren't so sure, because even exotic matter obeys thermodynamics. And this feels like it's negotiating with it. The object reaches a stable temperature and holds it, not drifting, not decaying, holding. As if that temperature matters, as if crossing it would be a mistake. That thought lingers longer than anyone wants it to. Because mistakes imply goals, and goals imply purpose. 3I/Atlas continues its silent journey, unbothered by debate, unchanged by doubt. Its heat curve remains steady, controlled, patient, like a machine running far from home, still doing its job. No message arrives, no signal explains the behavior, just numbers. Clean, persistent, unforgiving. And slowly, a realization settles in. If this object is natural, then our understanding of nature is incomplete. But if it isn't, then whatever set these thermal rules did so carefully, quietly long ago, and sent this thing drifting through the dark, not to announce itself, not to warn us, but simply to exist, following its pattern, keeping its temperature, waiting for something, or passing us by without ever caring that we noticed at all. As the readings stabilize once more, the question hangs in the silence. Who or what decides how cold space is allowed to be? And why does this object seem to know the answer? It's the sharpness that unsettles them first, not the brightness, not the size, the clean edge of the reflection. Out in space, nothing shines perfectly. Dust scatters light, ice diffuses it, rock absorbs it unevenly. Nature is rough, scarred, imperfect. So when 3I/Atlas catches sunlight at just the right angle and sends it back almost untouched, people pause. Because this isn't a glow. It's a flash, brief, focused, controlled, like a signal reflected off glass. At first, it's dismissed as geometry. Every object has angles. Every surface has facets. If you look long enough, eventually something will line up. That's what they tell themselves. But then it happens again. Different angle, Different time, same result. A clean spike in brightness. Sharp rise, sharp fall. No fuzz, no scatter. Just return. As if the sunlight hits the surface and knows exactly where to go. Reflectivity data starts piling up. Numbers replacing assumptions. The reflectivity isn't high all the time. That would be easy to explain. Ice can do that. Metal can too. But this isn't constant. It's selective. At certain orientations, the object behaves like a dull stone. At others, like a mirror. That shouldn't happen randomly. Natural surfaces don't switch personalities. They don't choose when to shine. Someone overlays orientation data with reflectivity spikes. The alignment is uncomfortable, too consistent, too repeatable. The object reflects cleanly only when aligned in very specific ways, as if the surface was shaped for that purpose. Flat, smooth, intentional. The word specular appears in a note. Mirror-like reflection. Rare in nature. Possible, but rare. Especially on an object that has supposedly traveled for millions of years through dust, radiation, and debris. Time roughens everything, except this. The reflection looks preserved, protected, maintained. That's when the conversations changed tone. Still quiet, still careful, but different. Someone says it casually at first, half joking. What if it's artificial? The room doesn't laugh, not because they believe it, but because no one can immediately explain it away. Artificial doesn't mean alien. Not yet. It just means designed, shaped with purpose. And that's a dangerous idea, because once you allow purpose into the equation, fear follows close behind. So they push back, hard. Maybe it's crystalline ice. Maybe it's an exotic alloy formed naturally. The universe is creative. It's allowed to surprise us. But then another spike appears, even cleaner than the last, almost surgical. The reflectivity curve doesn't smear. It doesn't blur. It rises like a blade and drops just as fast. That kind of reflection is efficient. Too efficient. It wastes no light. Which raises a question no one wants to answer. Why would a random object evolve efficiency? Efficiency is expensive. Nature usually doesn't bother unless it has to. Someone checks surface degradation models, micrometeorite impacts, solar wind erosion. The surface should be rough by now. Pitted. Scarred. Yet the data suggests smoothness. Not everywhere. Just where it matters. Like panels, the object rotates slowly. As it does, different faces turn toward the sun. Most of them behave normally. One doesn't. It acts like it was polished, not shiny, not decorative, functional. That's when the word mirror starts circulating. Not in reports, in whispers. A mirror doesn't generate light. It redirects it, which means if you are trying not to be seen, a mirror could help. Reflect light away from observers. Hide in plain sight. Be bright only when alignment forces you to be. The idea feels unsettling because it suggests strategy, not communication, not contact, just passage. Some scientists grow uneasy with the direction of thought. They remind everyone of history. We've been wrong before. Mars canals. Face on Mars. Signals that turned out to be stars. Humans are good at projecting fear onto data. We see intention where there is none. We tell stories because we're afraid of silence. And space is full of silence. Maybe this is just that. A rare surface, a lucky angle, nothing more. But the data doesn't retreat, it stays. As 3I/Atlas moves closer, the reflectivity spikes repeat, always at specific orientations, always clean, always quiet. No transmission accompanies them, no energy spike, just reflection, like a hand catching light and letting it go. The unsettling part isn't that it reflects so well, it's that it reflects only when it should. As if someone once calculated the angles, as if the surface was shaped with knowledge of stars, of trajectories, of motion. That thought lingers, not loudly, but long enough. Because raw data doesn't care about our fears. It just keeps arriving, clean, consistent, unemotional. Public statements stay grounded. Unusual reflectivity requires further analysis. Nothing alarming, nothing conclusive. But privately, something cracks. Because if this is artificial, then it was built to last. And if it was built to last, then time didn't stop it. Distance didn't stop it. Nothing did. It crossed interstellar space untouched, unannounced. And now, it's here. Not talking, not hiding, just reflecting. The mirror-like behavior doesn't escalate. It doesn't respond to attention. It doesn't change when models adjust. It simply persists, like a feature doing exactly what it was meant to do. Some scientists step back, not from fear, from humility, because the more they look at the data, the less it feels like projection, and the more it feels like description. Description of something that doesn't fit our categories. Not rock, not ice, not debris, but not a message either. Just structure, purpose without explanation. And that's the hardest thing for the human mind to sit with, because fear needs faces, stories need villains, but this offers none. Only behavior, only reflection, only silence. As the sun's light continues to glance off that strange surface, one thought refuses to leave. If this is just a natural object, then nature is far stranger than we imagined. But if it isn't, then whatever made this mirror never meant for us to see ourselves in it, only to notice, too late, that something passed through our system and reflected the universe back at us. Without ever acknowledging we were watching, they listen. Not because they expect an answer, but because listening is what humans do when they don't understand. When light curves bend, when heat behaves strangely, when reflections sharpen like mirrors, the next step is obvious. You listen. Radio telescopes turn quietly towards 3I/Atlas. Massive dishes pivot with slow, patient grace. Arrays sync their clocks. Frequencies are chosen carefully. Not just one band, but many. Low, high, in between. Anything that might leak. Anything that might hum. Anything that might say something without meaning to. Because if something is regulating itself, if something is precise, then maybe it leaves a trace. A signal doesn't have to be a message. It can be a byproduct. Waste heat, electromagnetic noise, a quiet whisper of energy escaping. That's all they're looking for. Just proof that something is happening inside. The first scans come back clean. Too clean. No spikes. No bursts. No repeating tones. just the familiar static of the universe, cosmic background radiation, distant pulsars, the usual clutter of space. 3I/Atlas adds nothing to it. At first, that's reassuring. Silence means natural. Silence means inert. But then the silence stretches. They scan again. Different angles. Different times. Still nothing. No radio emissions. No microwave leakage. No infrared signature beyond what's already been seen. It's as if the object is sealed, perfectly quiet. And that's when the unease returns. Because silence isn't neutral. Silence can be intentional. Most natural objects are noisy. They crackle with radiation. They leak energy. They interact with their environment. Even dead rocks whisper. This one doesn't. It reflects light when it wants to. It regulates heat when it needs to. But it speaks in no frequency we can hear. Someone jokes nervously. Maybe it's just polite. No one laughs. Because the silence feels curated. As if someone went out of their way to leave nothing behind. Scientists expand the search. Optical emissions, ultraviolet, X-ray, still nothing. No flare, no exhaust, no signature of power generation. Which creates a new problem. If something is active, where is the energy coming from? And if energy is being used, where is it going? Energy leaves footprints. Always. Unless you are very careful. The thought sits uncomfortably in the room. Because careful implies intention. They run comparisons. Voyager probes, old satellites, defunct spacecraft. Even the most basic machines leak tiny signals. Background noise. Ghosts in the data. 3I/Atlas leaks nothing. It's not loud. It's not quiet either. It's absent, as if the universe forgot to include it in the conversation. Some scientists argue this is proof of nothing. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. A phrase repeated like a shield, and it's true. But repetition doesn't remove doubt, because patterns are forming everywhere else. Light, heat, reflection, all structured, all controlled. And now, silence. Silence that fits too well. Someone overlays timelines. Pulse in brightness, thermal stabilization. Reflectivity spikes, then radio scans. Every time the object does something, it remains silent. No emissions coincide with the behavior. No detectable byproducts. It's as if the processes are closed loop, contained, like a system designed not to announce itself. That's when a dangerous idea slips in. Not spoken, just felt. What if the silence is the signal? What if the absence is the feature? In nature, silence is accidental. In engineering, silence is often a goal. Stealth isn't about being invisible. It's about blending into noise. And the universe is full of noise, a perfect place to hide. The object continues its journey, indifferent to the scrutiny. It doesn't respond when listened to. It doesn't react when scanned. It doesn't change behavior when observed. That's unsettling, because reaction implies awareness. But non-reaction implies confidence, as if whatever this is doesn't care who's watching, or knows it doesn't need to. Publicly, nothing changes. There are no statements about radio silence, no hints of concern, just routine updates. But behind the scenes, the tone shifts again. From curiosity to caution. Because once you search for a signal and find none, you're forced to ask why you expected one in the first place. Maybe we're assuming too much. Maybe intelligence doesn't announce itself. Maybe it passes through quietly, observing nothing, interacting minimally, like a surveyor or a relic, or something far older than communication as we understand it. The silence stretches on, day after day, scan after scan. The background noise of the universe keeps playing. Stars burn. Pulsars tick. Galaxies hum. And 3I/Atlas says nothing. It's not hiding behind noise. It simply doesn't contribute. That absence becomes heavy, because now there's no comfort of dismissal. If it were noisy, it could be broken. If it were loud, it could be natural. But silence, perfect silence, feels chosen. Some researchers step away from the data. They need distance. Because the question forming is no longer technical, it's philosophical. If something can cross interstellar space, regulate itself, reflect with precision, and remain perfectly silent, then maybe communication was never the point. Maybe this object wasn't built to speak. Maybe it was built to endure, to move, to exist without being noticed. And if that's true, then what else has passed by before? Unseen, unheard, unrecorded. The silence doesn't break. No last-minute signal, no farewell transmission, just continued absence. A void where something should be, and slowly the idea takes root. That maybe we've been asking the wrong question. Not what is it saying, but why does it say nothing at all? Because in a universe this loud, silence stands out. And sometimes the quietest things are the ones that change everything. As 3I/Atlas drifts onward, wrapped in its perfect stillness, one thought settles in the minds of those listening. If this object was designed, then it was designed not to talk. And if that's true, then its silence isn't a failure. It's a message we were never meant to hear, only to notice. Too late. As it passes quietly through the dark, the word doesn't arrive all at once. It slips in quietly, between graphs, between late-night emails, between sentences that end without certainty. Machine. No one announces it. No one writes it into a report. It just appears, because at some point, coincidence runs out of room. Light curves don't pulse this cleanly by accident. Heat doesn't regulate itself without reason. Mirrors don't survive interstellar space untouched. Silence doesn't stay this perfect unless it's held there. Each anomaly alone could be forgiven. Together, they begin to resemble something else. Not chaos. Design. The realization doesn't spark excitement. It brings discomfort. Because calling something a machine changes everything. A machine isn't alive, but it isn't random either. It sits in the space between purpose without emotion, function without feeling. And the universe has never forced us to confront that before. Someone lays it out slowly, carefully. What if this object isn't reacting to space? What if it's operating within it? Not breaking rules, not bending them, using them. The light pulses could be diagnostics, the thermal control could be preservation, the reflectivity could be shielding or concealment. And the silence? Silence could be efficiency. Machines don't speak unless they need to. The room goes still. Because once you frame it that way, the behavior stops feeling strange. It starts feeling logical. A machine traveling for millions of years wouldn't broadcast. It wouldn't waste energy. It wouldn't announce itself. It would endure. It would survive dust, radiation, time itself. And it would be boring by design. Unnoticed is the safest state. Someone objects. Hard. This is projection. Fear layered onto data. Humans are good at this. We see faces in clouds, intent in randomness. We want stories, and the idea of a machine passing through our system is a powerful story. Too powerful. So they challenge it. What kind of machine doesn't do anything? No thrust, no communication, no maneuvering, just movement. The answer arrives slowly. One that has already done its job, or one that is still doing it quietly. Maybe travel is the job. Maybe observation doesn't require stopping. A camera doesn't speak. It just records. The thought feels heavier than fear, because observation implies awareness of us. And that feels personal. But others push back again. If it's a machine, where's the power source? Where's the waste heat? Where's the emission? Machines leave footprints. This one doesn't. And that's the problem. It doesn't behave like our machines. It behaves like something built by rules we don't understand. Rules optimized for time, not speed. For silence, not dominance. For survival, not interaction. The idea shifts again. Maybe it's not watching us. Maybe we're irrelevant. Maybe it was sent long before humans existed, before Earth had continents, before the sun was bright. A relic, a messenger with no recipient, or a probe whose creators are long gone. In that case, its indifference makes sense. It's not curious. It's not cautious. It's simply following a path, and we happen to be standing near it. That thought humbles everyone in the room, because it removes us from the center of the story. We're not special. We're just present. The machine question spreads quietly through the scientific community, not as belief, as possibility. And possibility is dangerous, because once you admit it, you can't close the door again. Publicly, nothing changes. No one says, machine. No one hints at design. Everything remains careful, measured, neutral. But privately, minds drift. Late at night, people stare at the same plots they've seen 100 times, and now they see intention where they didn't before. Not intelligence, not consciousness, just purpose. A thing that knows what it's supposed to do, and does it without deviation. The object doesn't slow. It doesn't adjust course. It doesn't acknowledge the sun, the planets, or us. It passes through the solar system like a needle through fabric, clean, precise, uninterrupted. That raises the hardest question of all. If this is a machine, then what is it for? Travel? Observation? Preservation? Or something simpler? Maybe it's a test, not of us, of physics, of endurance, of whether something built can survive the dark. And maybe the builders never expected anyone to notice. That possibility stings, because it suggests that even now, even here, we're not the audience. We're background noise. Some researchers find comfort in that, others don't, because it challenges the quiet belief humanity holds deep down, that if something intelligent exists out there, robot would care. But machines don't care. They execute, they persist, they pass through. The anomalies continue. No escalation, no reveal. Just steady behavior, like a clock that doesn't need winding. The machine question doesn't resolve anything. It only reframes the mystery. This isn't about aliens, or invasion, or contact. It's about existence without acknowledgement, purpose without dialogue. And that might be harder to accept than any signal, because a message would mean we're not alone. But a silent machine means something else entirely. It means the universe may already be full of things moving through it, built long ago, sent for reasons lost to time, still doing what they were made to do, whether anyone is watching or not. 3 I/Atlas continues its path, unchanged by speculation, unaffected by debate. If it is a machine, it doesn't stop. If it isn't, then nature has created something that looks disturbingly like one. Either way, the conclusion feels the same. Something purposeful passed near us. Not to meet us, not to warn us, not to study us, just to continue on. And as it moves farther away, the most unsettling thought settles in. If this object was built to observe, we may never know what it learned. And if it was built only to travel, then this moment, this brief alignment of curiosity and chance, was nothing more than a crossing of paths, two systems sharing space for a heartbeat, one asking questions, the other never answering. As the data keeps flowing and the object keeps moving, the machine question remains open, not solved, not dismissed, just waiting. Like the thing that inspired it, passing quietly through the dark, doing exactly what it was made to do. It doesn't start with panic. There are no raised voices, no slammed doors, no dramatic exits. What spreads instead is something quieter, unease. It shows up in pauses that last a little too long, in emails rewritten 3 times before sending, in meetings where no one quite meets anyone else's eyes, because the data isn't exploding outward anymore, it's folding inward. And when that happens, people stop talking about the object and start thinking about themselves. At first, the discussions are purely technical, careful, measured. What do we know? What can we prove? What can we rule out? But then the doors close and the tone changes. Questions stop being about light curves and thermal models and start circling something harder to define. Why does this feel wrong? Someone finally says it out loud. I should be excited, but I'm not. The room stays silent because everyone feels the same thing. This should be wonder. This should be the kind of discovery people dream about their entire careers. Something new, something unexplained, something big. But instead of awe, there's tension. Instead of joy, there's restraint. And no one likes admitting that. Leaked conversations begin to circulate quietly. Not dramatic revelations, just fragments, short messages. Careful language. We need to be cautious. Let's slow this down. Let's not speculate. Words meant to calm, but sounding like hesitation. Closed-door meetings multiply, not to hide anything specific, but to contain something emotional. Fear doesn't always look like terror. Sometimes it looks like control. Control of language, control of tone, control of expectations. Because once fear enters the room, wonder feels irresponsible. Someone points out an uncomfortable truth. Every time humanity finds something strange in space, We rush to explain it away, not because we hate mystery, but because mystery reminds us how small we are. And 3I/Atlas doesn't make us feel curious. It makes us feel observed, not watched. Observed, like a specimen under glass. That feeling is subtle, hard to justify, impossible to ignore. The object doesn't threaten us. It doesn't approach Earth. It doesn't change course. It doesn't do anything aggressive at all. And yet, it unsettles, because it doesn't need us. There's no sense of invitation, no gesture of contact, no acknowledgement. Just behavior that continues whether we look or not. Someone in one meeting says it plainly. This thing doesn't care that we exist. That sentence lands heavier than anyone expects, because wonder usually comes from connection, from relevance, from the idea that we matter in the story. This object strips that away. It behaves as if the universe is bigger than us, and that's not a comforting thought. Another researcher pushes back. Maybe we're projecting. And they're right. Humans project all the time. We see meaning where there is none. We turn randomness into narrative, but projection usually brings excitement. This brings discomfort. Why? Because the anomalies don't flatter us. They don't suggest communication. They don't hint at discovery for us. They suggest indifference, and indifference is harder to face than hostility. Fear grows not from what the object might do, but from what it refuses to do. It refuses to explain itself. It refuses to perform. It refuses to acknowledge us. That challenges something deep. The quiet belief that the universe exists to be understood, and that we are the ones meant to understand it. Some researchers begin to worry less about the object and more about the reaction to it. What happens if the public senses this unease? What happens if people realize the experts are unsettled? Not because of danger, but because of meaning. Fear spreads faster than facts, so communication becomes cautious. Statements are delayed. Language is softened. Nothing false is said. But not everything is said either. Not because of conspiracy, because of uncertainty. And uncertainty doesn't sit well with authority. Behind the scenes, emotions clash. Some want openness. Some want restraint. Some feel this is the most important moment of their careers. Others feel it's something that should pass quietly. Why? Because wonder invites questions, and questions invite reflection. And reflection can be destabilizing. This object doesn't give us a story where we are heroes. It gives us a story where we are incidental. And that's unsettling. One leaked note captures it perfectly. This doesn't feel like discovery. It feels like interruption. That word spreads. Interruption. As if the universe was doing something, and we accidentally noticed. As if we weren't supposed to be part of it. That feeling explains the fear better than any data. It's not fear of invasion. It's fear of irrelevance. The idea that advanced behavior can exist without caring about us. That purpose can pass through our solar system and not slow down, not wave, not even look back. That shakes something fundamental, because wonder is safe when it places us at the center. Fear appears when it removes us. As days go on, the object keeps moving, unchanged, unimpressed, and the human reaction becomes the real story. Late-night conversations turn philosophical. What if the universe is full of things like this? Not civilizations, not empires, just artifacts. Old, silent, purpose-built, crossing space without intention towards us. How many have passed by before? How many did we miss? That thought doesn't inspire wonder, it inspires humility. And humility feels a lot like fear when you're not used to it. Some researchers catch themselves hoping the object turns out to be mundane, a rare rock, a strange surface, a statistical fluke. Not because they hate mystery, but because mystery with purpose forces reflection, and reflection can be uncomfortable, especially when it asks, what does it mean to be intelligent in a universe that doesn't respond? What does it mean to search for signals when silence might be the norm? What does it mean to exist if existence doesn't guarantee relevance? 3I/Atlas continues its path, and the closer it gets to leaving, the stronger the feeling becomes. Relief mixed with disappointment. Because once it's gone, the question fades. But while it's here, it holds up a mirror, not to space, to us. Our hopes, our fears, our need to matter. The object doesn't trigger fear because it's dangerous. It triggers fear because it doesn't reassure us. It doesn't say, you are not alone. It says nothing at all. And in that silence, we hear something uncomfortable. That the universe may not be waiting for us to understand it. That wonder is something we choose. But fear is something we feel when control slips away. As meetings end and doors open again, everyone returns to their roles. Professional, measured, calm. But something has shifted. The object may be the anomaly, but the reaction is the revelation. Because in the face of something that doesn't care, we learn how deeply we do. And as 3I/Atlas moves farther along its silent path, one quiet truth remains. This wasn't just a test of our instruments, it was a test of our perspective. And the discomfort it stirred says less about what's out there, and far more about who we are. When the universe doesn't answer back, something changes when the arguments stop being about numbers. Not because the data disappears, but because it's no longer enough. The charts are still there. The curves still bend. The pulses still repeat. But now, the conversations drift from how this behaves to what it means. And that shift is quiet, but irreversible. Because once a mystery survives explanation, it stops being technical. It becomes philosophical. At first, people resist that idea. Science isn't supposed to feel like this. It's supposed to narrow possibilities, not widen them. Yet here they are, with more data than ever, and less certainty than before. Someone asks a question that feels almost inappropriate in a research meeting. What if this isn't natural? The room doesn't react the way it would have weeks ago. No scoffs, no sharp corrections, just silence. Because everyone has already asked themselves the same thing, alone. If this object has an origin beyond nature, then it didn't form. It was made. And that single word rearranges the universe. Made things imply makers. Makers imply intention, and intention implies a reality where humanity is no longer the most advanced behavior in the room. That realization doesn't arrive as panic, it arrives as disorientation. Like realizing the ground you've stood on your whole life isn't as solid as you thought. For centuries, humans have looked at the sky and told themselves a comforting story, that we are early, that we are rare, that intelligence is fragile and fleeting, that the universe is mostly empty and mostly indifferent. 3I/Atlas challenges that story, not loudly, not dramatically. It does it by existing, by behaving in ways that don't require us, by following rules we didn't write. And suddenly the question isn't whether we can explain it. It's whether we're emotionally prepared for the explanation, if it ever comes. Some scientists lean into the discomfort. They argue that this is what progress feels like, that every major shift in understanding came with fear. The Earth wasn't the center. The sun wasn't special. The galaxy wasn't alone. Each time, humanity had to step back and make room. Maybe this is just the next step. But others feel something different. Not fear of discovery, fear of implication. Because this object doesn't suggest a universe teeming with voices. It suggests a universe filled with remnants, with things built long ago for reasons that may no longer exist. That's a colder thought. It implies not companionship, but legacy. Not conversation, but evidence. And that forces a reckoning. If something artificial can cross interstellar space and leave no trace, then intelligence doesn't have to announce itself. It doesn't have to seek contact. It doesn't even have to survive biologically. It can persist as behavior, as structure, as purpose encoded into matter. That idea reframes humanity's search entirely. What if we've been listening for voices? In a universe that communicates through objects? What if truth doesn't arrive as a signal, but as a passing shape that refuses to explain itself? Those thoughts don't fit neatly into journals or press releases. They live in the spaces between, in late-night walks home, in quiet stares at the ceiling, in the feeling that something fundamental has shifted, even if nothing visible has changed. The public debate remains cautious. Words like alien are avoided, not out of fear, out of respect for how little is actually known. But internally, something has awakened. A collective awareness that this isn't just about 3I/Atlas. It's about readiness. Are we ready to accept that intelligence might not look like us, that it might not speak, or care, or even notice? Are we ready to accept that we might be late, that the universe may already be layered with history, and we're just beginning to read the margins? One scientist writes something in a private note that never makes it public. This object doesn't expand our knowledge. It shrinks our ego. That sentence spreads quietly, because it captures the feeling perfectly. The awakening isn't about discovery. It's about humility. The realization that truth doesn't exist to comfort us. That reality isn't obligated to align with our expectations. And that intelligence, if it exists beyond us, may have moved on from questions we're only just beginning to ask. 3I/Atlas continues its path. Still silent, still precise. It doesn't confirm anything. It doesn't deny anything. It simply remains. Unresolved. And that unresolved state becomes the lesson. Because for the first time, humanity isn't faced with a mystery it can conquer by force or curiosity. It's faced with a mystery that asks for patience, for restraint, for acceptance of uncertainty. If this object has an origin beyond nature, then the truth it implies isn't about danger. It's about scale, about time, about our place in a universe that may be far older, far quieter, and far more indifferent than we ever imagined. That realization is sobering, but also clarifying, because it strips away fantasy and leaves something more honest behind. We are not the center. We are not the audience. We are participants, whether invited or not. And maybe that's what this object truly reveals. Not proof of others, but proof that reality doesn't revolve around our need to understand it. As the debates continue and the object drifts onward, one question lingers heavier than all the rest. If the universe has already written chapters we weren't meant to read, are we brave enough to keep looking anyway? Because awakening doesn't come with answers. It comes with responsibility. Responsibility to question without assuming, to observe without projecting, to accept that some truths may never speak back. 3I/Atlas offers no closure, no explanation, just a quiet challenge to expand our perception without demanding reassurance. And as humanity stands at that threshold, one thing becomes clear. The greatest shift wasn't in the sky, it was in us, in how we define intelligence, in how we define significance, in how we define truth when the universe refuses to explain itself. And that awakening, whether we're ready or not, has already begun. It happens without ceremony, no final alert, no dramatic shift in trajectory, just a quiet marker on a chart. Perihelion, the closest point, the moment everyone has been waiting for. This is when answers are supposed to arrive. Heat should spike, activity should increase, behavior should change. That's how it works, at least. That's how it's always worked before. For a brief window, all eyes are locked in. Telescopes track every movement. Sensors watch every fluctuation. Teams wait for something, anything that breaks the pattern. But 3I/Atlas doesn't transform. It doesn't awaken. It passes. The sun washes over it with everything it has. Radiation, heat, light, and still, the object holds. The thermal curve rises, then steadies, exactly where it did before. The reflectivity spikes soften, not vanish, just lose their edge. The pulses in brightness begin to weaken. Not abruptly, not dramatically. They fade, like a heartbeat growing distant. That's when the room grows tense, because fading means time is running out. This was the moment, the closest approach, the best chance to see what it really was. If there was ever going to be a reveal, it would have happened here. But nothing happens. No flare, no rupture, no unexpected maneuver. Just motion, steady, unbothered, as the object slips past the sun and begins its journey outward. The data shifts subtly. The pulses become harder to detect. The light curve smooths, not because the mystery is solved, but because the signal is leaving. Distance stretches everything thin. What was once precise becomes faint. What was once unsettling becomes ambiguous, and slowly the possibility settles in. This may have been our only chance. Some scientists feel frustration first, years of training, decades of curiosity, all for a mystery that refuses to open. They replay the data, recheck assumptions, as if somewhere, hidden between frames, there's a clue they missed. But others feel something different, a strange calm, because not all encounters are meant to be understood. Some are meant to be noticed. The object doesn't rush away. It doesn't accelerate. It simply continues along the path it always intended to follow, which suggests something unsettling, that it never came to us. We were just in the way. The pulses weaken further. Once distinct rises and falls blur into background noise. The heartbeat everyone watched so closely is now barely audible. Soon it will be gone entirely, and no one can stop that. This is the quiet cruelty of distance, not dramatic loss, just gradual disappearance. As the object recedes, conversations change again. Not frantic, not fearful, reflective. What were we expecting? A message? A confirmation? A moment where the universe looked back and nodded? Maybe that expectation was the mistake. Maybe understanding was never the point. Someone says it out loud in a meeting that feels more like a confession than a discussion. What if this wasn't for us? The question hangs there, heavy, uncomfortable, but honest, because everything about this object suggests indifference. It didn't adjust course. It didn't respond to scrutiny. It didn't reward curiosity. It behaved like something with its own timeline, its own purpose, and that purpose did not include explanation. That realization hurts more than uncertainty, because uncertainty still gives hope. This gives closure without answers. The sun fades behind it. The object grows colder again, not because it's failing, but because it's leaving the environment where it could be seen. And soon, it will be just another faint point, then another line in a database, then nothing at all. The pulses stop. Or maybe they continue, just too far away for us to notice. That thought lingers. Did the behavior end, or did we simply lose the ability to observe it? That distinction matters. Because if it continues, then the mystery didn't resolve. It moved on. Some researchers feel a quiet grief, not for danger avoided, but for connection denied. There's something deeply human about wanting the universe to respond, to reward attention, to acknowledge curiosity. But the universe doesn't owe us that, and this object made that clear. As 3I/Atlas fades, one truth becomes unavoidable. Understanding requires cooperation, and this thing never agreed to cooperate. It offered no handshake, no exchange, just a brief overlap in space and time. Two systems crossing paths, one asking questions, the other executing its function. And then, leaving. The final datasets are archived, carefully labeled, carefully preserved. Future scientists will study them, reinterpret them, argue over them, but they will always share one limitation. They are incomplete, because the object is gone, and with it, the chance for clarity. Or maybe, the chance was never there to begin with. That thought reframes everything. What if our role wasn't to decode it? What if our role was simply to witness? To realize that the universe is capable of producing behavior beyond our frameworks, beyond our narratives, beyond our need for answers. The object continues outward, back into interstellar darkness, carrying whatever purpose it always carried, unchanged by our attention, unmoved by our curiosity, and slowly the emotional weight settles in. Not fear, not relief, acceptance. Because not every mystery is an invitation. Some are reminders that we don't control the questions we're allowed to answer. That significance doesn't require permission. That truth doesn't announce itself with clarity. Sometimes it passes quietly, leaving only a disturbance in our expectations. As the last reliable data point is recorded, one final question rises. Was this our only chance to understand it? Or was understanding never the point at all? Because maybe the real message wasn't in the pulses, or the heat, or the reflection. Maybe it was in the passing itself. The fact that something could move through our system, follow rules we didn't write, and leave without explanation, reminding us that the universe is not a puzzle designed for human hands. It is a process, ongoing, impersonal, vast. And we are observers, briefly allowed to notice. As 3I/Atlas disappears into the dark, the sky returns to normal. Stars hold steady. Planets keep their paths. Nothing looks different. But something is. Because once you've watched something pass without answering, you stop expecting the universe to explain itself, and that changes how you look at everything that follows. The object is gone, the mystery remains. And perhaps that was always enough. Long after the last data point is logged, long after the charts go flat, long after the object becomes too faint to track, the questions don't disappear. They linger in quiet offices, in unfinished notes, in the space between certainty and doubt. 3I/Atlas is gone now, not destroyed, not transformed, just distant, slipping back into the same darkness it came from. Out there, beyond the reach of our instruments, it continues. Or maybe it doesn't. We no longer know. And that uncertainty becomes the final anomaly. Because science is built to resolve things, to close loops, to finish stories. This one refuses. At first, people tell themselves the mystery ended when the object left, that whatever it was, it no longer matters. But that's not how human minds work. We don't let go of unanswered patterns. We carry them quietly. The conversations change tone again. No longer urgent, no longer tense, reflective, almost personal. Someone revisits the full timeline. The light pulses, the thermal control, the mirror-like reflection, the silence. Each piece alone could still be argued away, but together they form a shape, not a clear one, but a recognizable one, a pattern. And patterns are dangerous because they demand meaning. If this object was artificial, if it was silent by design, if it crossed interstellar space without calling attention to itself, then the question isn't what was it, it's why did we see it at all? Because it didn't announce itself. It didn't change behavior when observed. It didn't respond to scrutiny. It behaved as if observation didn't matter, which leads to an unsettling possibility. Maybe it wasn't meant to be observed. Maybe we were never the audience. Maybe we were incidental. That thought shifts everything, because for the first time, the mystery stops pointing outward and starts pointing inward. What if the object wasn't here to teach us about others, but to reveal something about ourselves, our assumptions, our expectations, our need for answers? Humans are storytellers. We see events and ask, what does this mean? But the universe doesn't promise meaning. It promises behavior. 3I/Atlas behaved quietly, precisely, indifferently. And in doing so, it forced us to confront a truth we rarely face. That observation doesn't imply importance. That being able to see something doesn't mean it exists for us. That intelligence, if it exists beyond us, may not care about recognition. That realization is uncomfortable because it removes us from the center. Some researchers revisit old questions with new eyes. What if the universe is filled with artifacts like this? Not civilizations shouting across space, but remnants drifting silently. Machines built to last, not to speak. Structures designed for endurance, not interaction. If that's true, then our search for signals may be incomplete. We've been listening for voices in a universe that communicates through absence, through silence, through things that pass by without explanation. And that reframes the entire human story, not as explorers waiting for contact, but as observers learning to notice. Maybe the purpose wasn't to understand the object. Maybe the purpose was to test our reaction. Would we project fear? Would we invent narratives? Would we demand meaning? Or could we sit with uncertainty? Could we accept that not everything that exists is meant to acknowledge us? That question lingers longer than any data anomaly, because it touches something deep, our identity. For centuries, we've measured progress by what we can explain, what we can classify, what we can control. 3I/Atlas resisted all three, and in doing so, it revealed a limit, not of technology, but of perspective. One scientist writes a final note in a private journal. This wasn't a message from the universe, it was a mirror. That idea spreads quietly because it fits. The object reflected sunlight, but it also reflected us, our curiosity, our fear, our need to matter. We wanted it to mean something about us, but maybe the only thing it truly revealed was how much we want the universe to notice us back. As time passes, the story fades from public attention. New discoveries take its place. New mysteries rise. But among those who watched closely, something remains changed. A subtle shift. A humility that didn't exist before. They still look at the sky, still ask questions, but now they listen differently, not just for signals, but for patterns, for behavior that doesn't demand interpretation, for truths that exist without explanation. Because maybe the most important realization wasn't about artificiality. It was about awareness, that noticing is not the same as being addressed, that existence doesn't require validation, that the universe may be full of processes that don't care whether we understand them, and maybe that's okay. 3I/Atlas is gone, but the pattern it left behind remains, not in space, in thought, in the quiet recognition that we are not the center of every mystery, that some things pass through our lives not to be solved, but to remind us how small and how curious and how human we are. The final question never resolves, it simply waits. If this object was artificial and silent by design, were we meant to observe it, or were we only meant to notice ourselves? In the moment we realize the universe doesn't owe us an answer, because sometimes the most powerful pattern isn't written in light. It's written in the way a mystery changes the ones who witness it, and long after the object vanishes into the unknown, that change remains, quiet, unfinished, and still watching back.